to the Spanglish Cafe Music Podcast. I am your host, JCee Colon.
And Alida Hernandez. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. chatting about the music industry with artists from around the world.
Ya tú sabes, sintonicen. Azota.
We're on.
Damas y caballeros, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spanglish Cafe, the music podcast. I am your host, JCee Colon, and my beautiful wife,
Alida Hernandez.
So we're here to discuss topics, right, from artists all around the world. Today, our first guest, producer, musician, parent,
the professor.
Mike Rivera. How you doing, Mike?
Good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for coming to the show.
No, thank you. I'm excited about checking out the Spanglish podcast.
Beautiful.
I know you guys have been talking about it for a while. And
Yeah.
So finally, we have to launch it sooner or later. So,
Let's just do it.
Let's just do it. So let me just ask a simple question. What made you become a musician? What was guiding you to since you was a kid? How did you get into music?
When I was a kid, actually, I wanted to be a scientist. This was my dream as a kid.
Oh.
But my uncles moved from Puerto Rico to Chicago, and they lived with us for a while. So I was very influenced by them. And I had an uncle that played guitar, another uncle that played trumpet. And we used to get together just to make noise and jam Sundays at my grandmother's house after church.
Yeah.
And then I decided to play bongo. My first instrument was bongo. I was a bongo player. That's what I did for about a year and a half. And then it's just a weird thing. The gentleman that used to play bass with us was moving to another neighborhood, and he didn't want to make that drive with his bass over to my grandmother's house on Sundays anymore. So literally, my uncle just took a look around the room and said, "You could be a bass player."
Just like that. You look like a bass player.
He took my bongo away. He brought out a guitar and he broke off the first two strings like in a cartoon, and he just handed it to me and said, "A bass is kind of like this."
Oh my gosh.
You must have been like,
Boricua, ¿verdad?
ya tú sabes.
See how we do things.
Yeah, that was about as much vote as I had.
How old were you?
I was 13, about to turn 14.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that's when you started with the music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, with bass.
With the bass.
With bass. So I
had been playing bongo for like a year.
before.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. Is any of your kids musically inclined? Because,
Both my kids, actually. My son Mike is a drummer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
This last half of the year, he hasn't been playing a lot of drums because he's doing travel basketball.
Ah.
So that takes up
So deportista y músico.
a lot of time.
Gotcha.
And then my daughter plays flute and she plays trumpet.
Nice.
That's awesome. So
She's gonna put down the trumpet though because her it's starting to affect her embouchure on the flute, and the flute's like her main.
Wow.
See, that's her preference. That's
Yeah.
her preference as an
So
instrument.
she wants to continue still on another instrument.
Right.
And she's probably gonna pick up violin this year.
Oh,
But she says, the violin, she likes the sound of it,
I
and it's
love
not going
the
to
violin.
interfere with her flute playing because she plays first chair.
so I have a little violin back there that I bought
it used to
because
be-
I wanted to learn. I've always wanted to learn violin. I love the sound of it. So I said, "Oh, I'll try it," but I have problems with my hands, so I can't hold it. I can't
Yeah, you have
It's-
to
I'm
be in a
having
certain,
really
you have
hard
to be in a
time
certain position.
in a certain position to hold the violin and be able to do with the strings since I have the cyst on my hands.
Oh, okay.
So I can't hold it. I'm like, I can't learn, and I can't do it. But the other hand, I'm not a left. I mean, like, it's weird.
So besides Mike, the transition that you did from the bongo to the bass, in between that time, like who were the ones that inspired you? What artists were around that make you like, oh wow, I want to be like this guy, or
Well, I mean, when my uncles first came from Puerto Rico, there was two artists that were always on the turntable. One was Los Angeles Negros. Okay.
I remember that.
So we used to hear all those old boleros every Sunday. And then the other one was Willie Colon. They were really big
Yeah.
Willie Colon fans.
It's not my
So-
family. Yo soy Colón, pero no relation.
So we were listening to Willie Colon and Calavo all the time.
Oh, those are my favorite artists.
And then the other artist we used to listen to a lot was Larry Harlow.
Ah,
Matter of fact, the first song once I learned some notes on the bass, 'cause nobody knew how to explain to me any notes on bass.
That's how I know when you just learn like in the house, or you're just doing it for fun. Nobody knows the notes or
So I was
music,
just
right?
trying. I was just trying to
Just feel it out, winging it out.
do it by ear and torturing everybody in the building. Then I went out and bought this Mel Bay. Yeah, it was the Mel Bay Bass Method Book 1, which showed you all the notes all the way to an A. And then the first salsa song that I tried to learn on my own was La Caldera by Larry Harlow, which is an A minor.
Wow.
So it's like,
Wow.
And that's what started it. And
that's it. And then just started playing around. And then around that time, there was this gentleman that used to run a center in Chicago called the Puerto Rican Congress. His name was Carlos Ruiz. He said, I think I want to make a band with kids. Would you be interested in playing bass? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I went over there, and at that very first rehearsal is where I met pianist Edwin Sanchez, who was my longtime partner and collaborator, like decades. I mean,
Wow.
we worked on productions and played together for years and years and years. He's in Orlando now. He's playing with Tito Nieves.
okay.
Hey, remind me, I gotta send you a thing on him. They were going to Tenerife and they got stuck in the airport.
Oh,
Where?
And
Tenerife.
they were going to Tenerife,
Okay.
La Isla Canaria,
Right.
and they found they were stuck in the airport, and there was in the middle of Newark Airport there was an acoustic piano.
Wow. Wow.
So he sat down the piano and just started playing, and Tito Nieves started singing
No way.
Fabricando Fantasias
Oh,
and some
wow,
other
that's-
songs.
Oh,
See,
my
that's-
And he was
gosh.
just accompanying on solo piano.
Oh, wow.
And the thing, I'm surprised you didn't see it because it went viral.
Really? Wow,
All of
I
a sudden, it
haven't
was
seen
like all over the place on Facebook, and
I have to look into that.
yeah, it was
when
pretty
was
funny.
that?
It was like a month ago.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, I called him to tease him about it. I said, because he used to play with Tito back when Tito used to live in New York. At that time, we were both living in New York, and so he was playing with Tito.
Imagine the crowd in Newark.
I'm telling you. No, it is.
All the Latinos.
No, and other people obviously that videoed it because it
Yeah.
kept showing on everybody's feeds, from different angles and stuff. So anyway, the point of that story, the story had a point. Edwin and I were playing. We started rehearsing, and we made this little band. And one song that we learned was Aguinaldo Puertorriqueño
Okay.
in A minor, of
That's
course.
very important.
That's the only key I knew. And the other song was a song that we made up called Maria Cristina, which was Guess the Key. It was also an A minor. So we used to practice that song all the time. And then one day, the guy who was Carlos, Mr. Ruiz, was going to manage us. He said, "Oh, I'm going to take you guys to a recording studio so you could see what it's like." And we were all excited. We thought we were just going to the studio. And he tells us, "Well, while you're there, we're going to record a little bit and see what comes out, and we're going to have a special guest." The special guest was Mongo Santa Maria.
Wow. See, this is awesome. These are the stories. This is what Spanglish Cafe is all about. These are the stories that I want people to hear, because people don't they don't dig into, unless you're not a main singer. That's my opinion. They're not interested, or quien tocó. Only musicians do that. Oh, mira, trompetita okay. No, el tipo toca bien, but they don't dig into stories like that. This is what Spanglish is all about.
Correct.
This is why Mike is here. We're gonna explain a lot of
Correct.
things about the music industry. So anyway, Mike, after that journey, with that gentleman that they formed the group, when was really in the way after the studio stuff? Let's go to the part when now you do your first production, like with somebody, with a band.
It was the same band.
It was the same band.
That same band of kids, we stayed together as a unit for 11 years.
Oh, wow.
And we played all over the Midwest.
What was the name of the band?
What's the name of the band?
Chicago's Típica 78.
Oh, wow.
And we went, and we played all over the Midwest, and we played a lot of things on the West Coast. We used to go to Seattle to play, San Francisco. That whole San Francisco, Oakland, Fresno area.
Right.
Down in San Jose, we used to go there a lot to go play. And we were just kids.
You guys were just teenagers.
And this was before you even started going to school, right? You hadn't even started going to music school, or were you
No,
going?
no, no. I wasn't going to music
When
school
did you
yet.
go? When did you start going to music school then?
Right after we came back from Seattle the first time, they hired somebody to come to the Puerto Rican Congress to teach us some music. His name was Mr. Stoller. I'll never forget his name. And he used to come over and on Thursday nights, and he used to give us a music theory class. So we saw, okay, this is treble clef, this is bass clef, these are the
Right.
notes, and that's how we got started. And I actually started knowing, oh, chord of the bass, oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, he was just winging it. But look,
But,
you did it good.
Exactly.
You winged it good.
What a concept! And then around that time, we were pretty serious for kids, and around that time, I was a bass player in Chicago named Carlos Velez. He used to play all the big shows when they came to town, and for whatever reason, we hit it off, and he liked me, and he said, "Well, why don't you come over to my house? I want to show you something." I thought he was going to give me a bass lesson. And I go to his house and he says, "No, since I know you like to learn about music and you want to do arrangements and stuff, before you do that, you need to know how to properly write the notes on the staff and how to properly copy music." So I went to his house and he gave me a stack of custom-made manuscript paper that he had
Wow.
That's amazing.
printed by this company called Les Davis, was like a big supplier in the Midwest. And he bought me my first music copying pen, which was a fountain pen with special
Right.
tips for copying music.
Right.
And we spent the whole afternoon. He was teaching me how to copy music, how to write the notes, how to make it look.
So you were already destined. I mean,
It was.
You got thrown into the music by
yeah, just
family, and then you just
and
kept
then
going
it
from
just,
there.
Yeah. It was pretty wild.
it is.
And then I was so excited that day, and then I left. Then he tells me, "Well, don't forget, you got to come back tomorrow at 11." And I came back on Saturday, and then I came back on Sunday. I spent the whole weekend
Wow.
learning how to copy music and
That's
how to
awesome.
prepare charts.
Now that you're saying that, Mike, people don't realize how much dedication. I mean, to become a professional, like Mike, it takes dedication. I mean, this is not just, oh,
And discipline.
I'm gonna practice next week, and then I'll dejar de bajo por 2 o 3 meses, and no. It's a constant battle. It's an everyday thing. I mean, people don't understand that.
Look, my mother's 85, and she still, even though she has some little bit of memory problems, but you know what? That woman still can open Chopin and play. I don't know how she does it. I cannot read. All I know, there's just black notes everywhere. And some of the things that she plays, the classical music, are very complicated. Like I see them that she's using. I don't know the keys of the piano, so illiterate.
But
she's using like all the keys. Like it's like I don't know what she's doing, and I see like triple lines. Like this. It looks like a double bar. Yeah, like a double bar of music or something. I'm like, what is all those notes? They're going up and down and this way.
Oh, wow, you just said it. 85 years. So imagine how much.
And she's still. I bought her.
Like,
I bought her the collection of all of Chopin's music.
Okay.
And that's her favorite. So I grew up with that. So I don't know, when I hear it, I know that, but I don't know who it is because I used to hear it as a little girl. But it was like this thick. It was like one book. And my mother's like, how am I supposed to put this on the piano? So I have to take it apart because it didn't make any sense. They did 1,000 pages in one book.
Right.
The piano doesn't have that much space. It only has like an inch to put music on there, But I know all the struggles. My mother used to play. She told me that because she was poor, she didn't have a piano. So what she did was, one of the neighbors had a piano, and she would sit outside the door just to listen. And she would listen. She would stay there all day just listening to the piano. It was so beautiful. And then one day the girl saw her. "What are you doing?" So "I'm just listening. I don't have a piano." And she invited her in. So my mother took paper and drew the piano keys on paper, all the keys. She looked at the piano and did the whole thing. So she would practice on paper. And because she could hear the music.
See, that's somebody
true musician, people who have this gift. My mother can hear the music in her head. So she played on a piece of paper, but she heard the piano.
You want to hear a funny thing? I duplicated paper pianos like that for all my students at the school where I teach.
Huh.
because I want them to get used to just forming their hand and knowing. Uh, I introduce it as learning, half steps and whole steps on the piano.
Oh, okay.
That's how I start, and they actually start learning the notes and so on and so forth. And it's, I have 14 students in the classroom. I'm not going to have 14 pianos there, but everybody has their favorite piano, and they can follow along. So that when it's their turn to come up and play the piano, they're already familiar with the keyboard.
See, look at that.
Siempre hay un truco para algo.
I know.
Siempre hay algo que
I
tú
know.
tienes que hacer, un molde, algo.
And when you don't have the money too, you invent yourself.
You have to, yes.
I mean, my mother saved when she started working. She saved her money little by little, the little money that she made to buy the piano that is still in our house today. Solid wood. We moved it yesterday. I almost pulled my back because it's so heavy. I thank God it has wheels, but still, it's so heavy.
No, it was well built.
Solid wood. I mean, I took a picture of the back of it. I have to post it later because it's just amazing the quality of this piano that she's had since 1960. Okay, it traveled from New York to here, and it still works fine. We just got to get it tuned again. But she still uses the piano.
So let me ask Mike, how long did you guys last? Like La Típica 78. How long? I mean, you guys started when you were teenagers, but when was the turning point that ya te empezaste a tocar? Or when did you,
You were already playing.
I no, but what I'm trying to say is, cuando tú ya llegaste al punto que ya, como suponer, nombre grande de la industria, de Tony Vega o
I'm still working on that part.
Todavía está trabajando en eso. Pero
No, but
desde ese punto de la orquesta que tú tenías, desde teenager.
It's a funny thing because when I was about 18, we backed up our first artist.
Okay, so
Nice.
you was already 18 when you already backed up.
Yeah, we backed up Junior Gonzalez,
Okay, so there you go. That's what
who used to sing with Larry Hardo, so we were familiar with the style already. And Junior had put out his solo album. We backed up Junior Gonzalez. Then we used to back up every time we went to the Midwest, Tito Allen.
Oh my God, that's
Like,
big. At
Mhm.
that age. ¿Y ya tú estabas componiendo ya o you was
Estaba
dabbling?
No, I was writing songs.
Ya estaba escribiendo.
At that time, I was more the songwriter than the arranger.
Oh.
And everyone used to do more of the arranging. And then I started getting into arranging out of necessity, because I remember we called like a few big time arrangers from New York. I forgot what they were charging in those days, $200 or $300. But for us, that was like
That was like 1,000
that
back
was like
then.
insane money.
Yeah, it was.
And so,
I have to ask, did you meet Larry Harlow?
yes, I did.
Okay, because I met him. I had the privilege of meeting him.
I got to play with him 12 years ago at the Adrian Arts Center here.
Oh,
He brought, he did two musicals, two operas. One which is Omi, and the second one which was La Raza Latina, which is a Latin suite. So they brought La Raza Latina to the Adrian Arts Center.
I never heard that before.
So this is all in Chicago. This is all taking
No,
place.
Adrian
no.
Arts is here.
Adrian Arts
Miami.
Center is here.
I'm saying when you were doing the band, Típica.
Yeah, this was all in Chicago.
This is all
That
in
was in
Chicago.
Chicago.
This was all in
Okay.
Chicago.
Yeah.
And then we found out that our manager was managing his way to our money, and we weren't seeing a lot of our money on gigs. And so we decided to break away from him.
Right.
And little by little, we started squirreling away our own money from the gigs. We had a little kitty. We saved up. By the end of my 18th birthday, we left that manager in Broke Honore. We had bought a van. We had bought our own music stands and stuff. We had started learning how to arrange. So we were copying all these charts. We had our own repertoire copied out. And then Edwin's father, we were looking for a PA system. We were just gonna buy it like one piece at a time because we didn't have any money. So we asked Edwin's father to come with us, and we went. He said, "Well, what do you think you guys would need?" He said, "Well, eventually we want to get these mics, but we want to get these monitors and this and this and that." And he said, "Okay, tell the guy to come over here." And we bought a whole PA, and Edwin's father signed for it.
Oh,
That's
wow.
cool.
That's awesome.
See, you have to have people that do certain things for you. I mean, it's not an easy road, but
Look, you had several mentors there. You had the man who did the the music, to learn how to write music, because you
Chucky,
you don't even hear about that anymore, because that's difficult.
When I first got to New York, when I got signed to Sir George Music as a producer, arranger, now I moved to New York at the end of '97. I was still copying by hand.
Wow, people don't do that. They do it in the computer
I
now.
was- yeah, and I was at that time. I was almost as fast as anybody with anything.
Listen up, people.
I
Okay,
used to copy
this is
music
things
fast.
that we don't know. Things that we don't know. We see great artists like Mike, and we don't realize. You just see him playing a bass. Or
You just hear
whatever,
the music.
Or
All
you
you
hear
hear,
people saying, "Sí, este arreglo me lo hizo Mike Rivera," and people know. La gente que son músicos, they know Mike Rivera. Por el público, yo quiero que el público empiece a, ¿cómo se dice? A reconocer músico y que está detrás del músico.
Sí.
Hay muchas cosas que la gente no sabe. ¿Ve? Oh, sí, mira, yo vi el grupo ahí, pero el cantante tremendo, pero y el que está en el bajo, el que está en el timbal, el que está en el piano,
right?
todos tienen una historia que contar. ¿Tú me entiendes? No es un camino fácil, pero mira.
But the writer is so fundamental. Without that, you don't have a song. So I mean, there's an awards here that they do every year, the Musa Awards, which is amazing because I got to see the real creators like a Desmond Child or these incredible composers, writers.
Let me tell you what was funny about that day. That day, right, when the show started, I see this guy coming out with some dancers, and he goes on the piano,
right,
and he starts playing these songs, and I'm like, honey, but isn't that is
Ricky Martin song?
Yeah, what is he doing there? And I didn't realize.
Desmond,
I didn't
we
realize.
Know it was him. We were right next to him.
And
we
he
didn't
played
even know.
he played like 8 songs in a row.
Right.
Different, like a medley.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this guy wrote all these songs.
Yeah. When he performed, that's right.
Y el que no sabe, no sabe. And I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that he wrote this for Ricky Martin.
And he performed.
And he performs.
He performs. He's an artist. He's a musician.
Stuff he wrote for Bon Jovi.
Oh my gosh!
Desmond Child.
No, Desmond Child is
it's a big name.
He's huge, but you don't hear that. You don't see it recognized only if they recognize as the writer, and that's what that award ceremony is. It recognizes the composers, the writers,
exactly.
Which they should have more of that. Not these. I'm throwing it out there because we're talking about everything. These awards for, and I'm not going to mention names. You know what they are. For artists that you've never even seen before. I want to know how the heck all of a sudden fulanito, whoever, like this little guy Skippy from Pennsylvania in this little town, all of a sudden is huge, right? Never seen him before in your life, and these are all these things that we're going to talk about and discuss in more shows about how people get into the industry, because it's not easy. No, Mike lives it. He lives it every day. He has to work nights. We call him up. He's exhausted, traveling with his bass, going to these gigs. They don't treat the musicians properly. I at least I've seen this. I'm not a musician, but my parents were both musicians. I've heard their stories, and that's why we respect musicians so much. We respect what you do and other people like that. Okay. When we have rehearsal here, we have food, we have water for you. We got, it's nice and cool in here. We take care of our musicians because without them, we have no music. So think about that.
Well, talking in general, Mike, I want to get to another note. I want to compare. What's your opinion with the old school, con la vieja guardia, la orquesta, los cantantes de esos tiempos, y ahora está emergiendo una generación ahora de salsa nueva? Hay muchos cantantes que están haciendo nuevas grabaciones. ¿Qué tú crees de el cambio y the change and what has changed?
Well,
y qué es diferente?
Music, like any art form, JCee, comes out of a tradition, and in the case of the music that we perform, the most salsa music, Latin music,
right?
There was a whole tradition of people who came up singing música típica from whatever country they were from. Right. You had people like Victor Manuel, who was, when he was a kid, he was singing, he was a trovador. He grew up learning about la música típica de Puerto Rico, and he also learned about improvisation, because there's a lot of improvisation in Aguinaldo. So all of those things fit into how he became known as a sonero and how he made his name as an artist. He didn't just pop out of nowhere. He came out of that tradition. If you go back to all the singers, Gilberto came out of Willie Rosario's band. Before that, he used to sing with I forgot the trumpet player's name. Elias Lopez's orchestra.
Okay.
And then he sang when he was like 17 years old. He was singing with Tony Evidencia.
Wow.
These guys had a long trajectory. It was a long. They were learning the art as part of a tradition
La
as
escuela,
they
estaban en la escuela.
working their way up. One of the things that I don't see now is that artists really have to struggle because there is not there's not a support system from the industry. Two, that that living tradition, that handing down of the art to the next generation or to
Yeah.
the next group. There's a disconnect there. It's not really there.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
a
like
lot
the
of
it's like the family. It's almost like the our family structure has broken the way things are now.
I think that's a good way to look at it.
So you think about that. So I grew up with my grandparents, both sides. A lot of people have never even met their grandparents, and you get traditions from your grandparents. I talk about them all the time, how they taught me things, and then you teach your children things, and you go on. So if music's in the family, then it would go on. I mean, I didn't. I was the only child from my mother and my father, but I didn't. I took piano lessons and stuff like that, but I never learned how to read properly. They didn't teach me, so I did everything by sound, by ear.
By ear.
But it got it was too difficult when you play classical music. I'm like, can you play that again? I'm like, oh no, that's not. No, you missed the key. No, what? The E or whatever, the D. What? Oh, that one. Okay, I didn't know it was a D or whatever it was. But what you're saying that like your children perform, are music inclined. They're already, doing has instruments. So that's what you're trying to do. Like a lot of these falsettos need to. Like
That's my personal thing is that element of the tradition is not there,
yeah.
and even with among the artists themselves, the camaraderie that we used to feel when we were coming up, just learning the music. I mean, we were the little kid band, and everybody used to say, "Oh, there comes the kiddie band," whatever. But we always had the support. We always felt like we were being supported by the other musicians on the Chicago music scene. And there were a lot of bands in Chicago. None of them that really became famous so much later. But there was a huge scene.
Right.
I mean, we were always playing.
It's like New York, Chicago.
I just say I agree with Mike. That it's a support system because
we see that now. This is one of the topics we want to talk about now.
Back in the day, I mean, of what I've heard and everything, I might be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But back in the day, let's talk about, I don't even want to talk about names, but let's just say La Vieja Guardia, all those guys that were hit, all these guys that were on tour, everybody that was involved in that business, there was promoters in those days that had disquera, they had record labels. So these guys were millionaires. So yes, of course, I would like somebody to come to me and say, mira, voy a gastar $250,000 en un proyecto Badí, and I already got you booked in all these cities, and all the photographers are there for you ready. So in other words, that guy was signed because of his talent. But that, like, what was the percentage of that artist going into his pocket to do anything? I mean, that's just my opinion. Then I guess when they used to sign you days, you tell me if I'm right or wrong. Let's say they signed a big artist, let's say Tito Allen, whatever. Okay. So yes, they invested money on this guy to record and everything, and they had all the tours booked and everything. But don't these artists have to pay all that money back that these investors invested in them?
No. They don't pay back.
No, not. I mean, the way the traditional record contract was structured, the company put up the money for the production. They gave the artist an advance,
Okay.
and that money was recouped against artist royalties. The part in the contract that says 100% recoupable. 100% recoupable
Okay.
from your money, not the record company's money.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's 100% recoupable. But if the record doesn't sell and they drop you, you're not responsible for paying them back.
Oh, that's good.
So that was a good deal.
It's recoupable.
Well,
it
yes and
was
no.
it was a good deal, but it's also a very expensive deal. I can't remember who was it said it. They used to compare record contracts like receiving a credit card in the mail, and you're all excited because you got this credit card. You're gonna go spend it. You don't
Right.
read the back of the paper that says it's 66%
So
interest.
Yeah, exactly.
Which you would never use that credit card if it was 66% interest because it'd
Right.
be mathematically impossible for you to pay it
I
back.
just think the new salseros, you know, we are having a hard time getting out there. You know, to me, it's not like back in the day. Even these record labels and all these promoters that they used to do, like Fanny and all, see, these people already was like, they had a support group. We don't have a support. To me, I feel we don't have a support group.
I mean, there's a lot of layers to that.
Mhm.
One of the big problems we have right now is that the way people consume music.
Mm-hmm.
When we grew up, we bought records.
Yep.
We bought this little piece of vinyl and we used to
Right.
spin it around and listen to the music. Okay, so we were buying a container of music.
Right.
All right, so when we bought that container, we were supporting the record company who put the record out.
Right.
We were supporting the songwriter
Yep.
who wrote the
Yeah.
songs, and we were supporting the artist.
Right.
So as we listened to music, we were contributing to the economic system.
Right.
Throughout the years, the container changed. Records were out anymore. People started using cassettes, but the music was still in a container.
Right. Not
It was
anymore.
Still, it was still a cassette.
Right.
And then from the cassette, somebody got the beautiful idea of digitizing everything and making CDs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the container was the CD, but there was still a physical product.
Right.
In the internet age, from 2001 on, you didn't need a container for the music anymore. You listen to it on your computer. You could download it, off the computer. If JCee's album came out and the only song you liked was Quiero Ser Campeón, well, you would just download Quiero Ser Campeón. You wouldn't bother getting the rest of the album. So out of that whole deal, out of that whole effort, and out of that whole investment, JCee's selling only one song.
Right.
Then with the advent of streaming services like Spotify,
Right.
which Spotify, I single that one out because creation of Spotify did a lot of damage.
Yeah.
A lot of people said, "Oh, it's great because now you don't need a record company. Everybody can be independent."
Yeah, but it's free.
Right.
Because everybody puts their product out on Spotify. But Spotify streaming services, they offer it as a premium streaming service,
Right.
for like $10 a month. But you could get it also, you can subscribe to Spotify for free.
Yes. Yep.
And people don't mind listening to a couple of commercials if they're going to get their music free
Right.
off of Spotify. And so what does that do for the artists and the composers and the arrangers and the industry, everybody else? Well, there's no more container anymore. So there's no way that money is split out that way.
Right.
So it's being paid by streams. I think the current rate on a stream from Spotify is 0.0045 cents.
Oh my gosh.
So out of a penny,
Yeah.
it's less than a quarter of a penny.
Yeah.
So you have to get a lot of streams before you see any revenue. And then when that revenue comes in,
What do you think the difference with with the radio situation? Like for new artists to play the song, I don't know.
Well, that's a whole nother
How's that
layer. That's
I
another
know,
layer.
That's another
because
I mean, radio has to do also something. I mean, like Spotify is one thing, radio is another thing.
but everything's about money.
when they changed it, and that goes back to the 90s.
The same thing that's happening with radio now.
Yeah, it goes to the tail end of the Clinton administration, when finally, in order to get certain things passed, they gave in and signed the Communications Act, which enabled stations to big radio stations to monopolize the radio by buying all the other stations. Like the 23 top Latin stations in the United States are all owned by SBS. And they're all owned by Spanish Broadcasting System. Even though each station has their individual programmer, SBS as a whole as a programmer who dictates, okay, this is the movie, this is the music we want to promote,
Exactly.
Okay.
and this is the audience we want to target with this.
Right.
And so now a small group of people have control over a large amount of the radio outlets.
Right.
So I'm sure if you listen to the radio, you're listening to let's not say a station, but
Right.
a top 40 Latin station,
Okay.
and
You'll hear the
you
same
hear the same
music.
Same program. Right.
Same artists. You'll hear all the yeah. Not even I don't want to mention the artist, but you hear the same artist because you don't hear before. Because again, like you said, we had a media, you had a tangible object before when you created music. I still have my LPs. I have my records. My mother had records. She did seven songs were produced and recorded under Ansonia Records back in 1961. And I still have those records.
Right, but they still playing La Vieja Guardia on the radios too.
Right.
Like you still hear,
But see, because the communications open, no, you don't get. That's the whole thing. Now,
commercial radio stations they have to sell ad time.
right.
So to sell ad time, they have to try to get the biggest swath of people that they can in an hour. So they're going to play the songs that people recognize the most. And so the variety of music that they program becomes more and more focused on a specific thing.
Right.
I remember there was a time when I first moved to Miami, and Mark Anthony's album came out, the one that had Valió la Pena, which was great for me because I worked on that record with
there you go,
Sergio.
that's another thing.
But I used to feel like Mark Anthony bought the radio station, because you would listen to El Sol, then you would switch to I can't remember the other, whatever it was, at 106 on the FM dial.
Right.
They were playing Mark Anthony, and then they play what the radio stations call recurrence. And who was in the recurrent?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark Anthony. So you heard,
phenomenal artist. I mean, no doubt about it.
but you heard the same thing, and it became the
Right.
same thing with the bachata.
Yeah.
You heard the same bachata artists all the time, and
And there's all genres of music. It's like that because on rock, on pop, on any channel radio you would listen to,
that's the way it's
same
become.
songs.
it's been like that. You turn it on, you can literally and what I find interesting, if you put 3 radio stations on, like say 3 rock or 3 Spanish, if you go, sometimes you catch the same song playing on the same
Oh, yeah.
song
Same time.
because they have the same kind of rotation. Because like you said, they're all owned by the same
Right.
company, so they got the same playlist going on. And I go, how come I just heard that song here and I changed the other one that's there? So that's why I'm always changing the radio station. Wow, I want to hear that
Like
song again.
I grew up in the days when there was like about 10, at least 10 radio stations, salsa.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't hear anything
back
anymore.
in New
I
York,
hear once in a while, we hear.
you don't hear it as
We
much.
hear other salsas here and there, the old school, but everything is either bachata or.
Well, I find that the media, unfortunately, this is disjustice to the artist, the talent that we have, the talent that's around the world. I'm not even just talking where we are. We're in Fort Lauderdale right now, but from here to Miami, are you kidding me?
There's so much talent.
There's so much talent. We've had showcases here that we had people just in this little area here in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm just left speechless for the amount of talent that's in the neighborhood. But you will never see them. And then they're trying to, get known on YouTube or something, because now everything's the internet, right? So you try to get famous there. And it's still very hard, because unless you pay for promotion to boost you and put ads and all this stuff, it's very hard to get 3 million followers unless you're already really well known.
Right, exactly. Right. That's
Takes time to build those things up, and the big corporations that own these radio stations now, a lot of them use focus groups to decide what new stuff is going to get on. And so if they take a random focus group of people, for example, they'll pick, if Mark had a hit recently, they'll pick something that kind of sounds like that, or something that sounds like kind of Romeo Santos, because they recognize the sound,
The beat.
Right.
and they respond to it in the focus group, and they say, "Oh yeah, I like that song." So things like so that's why you hear so many songs. Uh, that's one of my pet peeves about the urban genre.
Oh, they sound all the same.
So many of the songs sound
Ugh.
exactly the same. I remember
Yeah.
one day in class with my students, we just wrote a bunch of songs on the board, on my whiteboard, and I said, okay, let's look all these songs up on YouTube, and let's write down what the chord progression is for the first 8 bars.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all the songs were the exact same chord progression. And a
Wow.
lot of them were in the same key.
Really? That's why
It goes deep. I mean, people don't realize how
it played
deep the industry goes. I mean, it's a real deep rabbit hole, man. I mean, there's so many loops, and it's it's not easy, but I love what I do. I'm gonna keep on. I feel like I'm underground right now.
And
So
talking
underground.
about that, so JC's song, of course, Quiero Ser Campeón, is by Mike, the professor, right
Well, the
here.
production, the arrangement,
Production,
yeah.
Production
arrangement.
and arrangement
Right.
and bass.
Yeah, it was written by somebody else.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mike, let me get into something. Thank you for saying that. Pointing that out.
We're at an hour point.
I know. What do you think about all these new DJs now that are having their own shows? They're showing like the new generation, the salsa. You think that to me, I think that's a great thing.
But they're online.
Right, they're online. That's the only thing. But there's a lot of who is not online.
Everybody's online.
Everybody's
now.
online.
Yeah.
Everybody's in social
Yeah, but
media.
it's hard to track
Yeah.
which internet radio shows really have a big enough audience to make a dent to really get the message out.
But do you think this is a
Exactly.
start though? Like
No,
everybody trying for all angles, trying to promote the same music that's coming out now. The new music that's coming out, I go to maybe on the station in Peru and Colombia, and they're playing the same song from a new artist.
Another factor that has affected particularly the consumption of Latin music in the States is that Latinos are not first generation anymore.
Yeah.
Not even second generation. We're on third and fourth generation.
Yeah.
So a lot of them have lost a mastery or even
Culture.
an ear
Right.
for the language. So they don't, they don't.
Yeah.
If you put on, a complex Uruguayan Blada song that has a lot of lyrics,
They're lost.
they're not going to follow that whole thing.
Yeah.
Or you put on, a classic ballad from Luis Miguel's Romance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our generation, when we were still second generation, we still spoke enough Spanish that we could appreciate all those
Right.
lyrics.
Right, exactly.
But
We're losing that. Well, it's true. I'm first generation,
this is
and I mean, I know the music, but because I know the language. But like my kids don't speak Spanish. Not that I didn't try, but because they're here and they go to school in English, it's very difficult. It's not the same. It was just different. The tradition was different. So when I was little, grandma was around. So my grandmother was home. When she said, when you come home, en esta casa tú hablas español, afuera tú hablas inglés. Porque afuera todo el día estás con las amigas
Or you can
hablando
speak
inglés.
Spanglish if you want.
You always speak
Okay.
Spanish. Tú entiendes español.
You can speak Spanglish if you want.
the other thing. A couple of weeks ago, I went to the salsa fest at the arena, and they had about close to 18,000 people there. So yes, there's an audience for this music.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and the median ticket price was like $100
Wow.
and out.
Okay.
So people were spending money to go see this music. However, when the market they turned up for that concert was not the traditional Miami market. I mean, most people think about Miami, they think about the Cuban community and stuff like that. At this concert, Oscar de Leon, who's
Mhm.
traditionally had a very big Cuban following,
Right.
made his shout out to the Cubans,
Mhm.
and there was very little response. There wasn't very many Cubans there.
Right.
Then there was a decent response from the Boricuas, from the Puerto Ricans, and a decent response, a better response from the Colombians. But the biggest response was for the Venezuelan community.
Wow.
The amount of Venezuelans that were at that concert, and these are people who they still speak still native speakers in terms of Spanish, so they really
Right.
appreciate the music. They've been following this music for years, so they knew all these old songs, and they were really, really into it. So even within the
Yeah.
city where we live, the demographic is changing,
Right.
Correct.
and the audience
So shifting.
is still there, but it's just not
Yeah.
the traditional audience that we
Have you-
think is going to be there.
Have you ever worked with Calderon?
No, the closest I got to working with Oscar Leon was I lent him my baby bass for the Salsa Giants
Oh,
concert.
wow,
Ah.
that's amazing. That
Yeah.
to me would be a blast.
If you go into my Facebook, there's a picture of us together that day.
Nice. So anyway, I know we're running short in time, but I just want to ask you, how many compositions have you done, and can you mention some of the artists that you've done arrangements for?
I've done arrangements for Mark Anthony, Ricky Martin, Luis Fonsi, Jesus Enriquez, who's an artist that I developed for RMM back in the 90s, the guys who were in the New York scene back then. Miles Pena.
I like Miles Pena. I
Um,
used to go see him.
I've done a number of Christian artists. A lot of artists.
A lot of artists.
Yeah, Tito Nieves, Frankie Negron. I worked on Frankie's
You work
first
with
two
Tito
albums.
Jr. too.
Tito Puente Jr. as a sideman, as a musician.
Okay.
I've never produced him.
Okay.
But he knows
There's a
all
lot. You can go if you want. Go into allmusicguide.com. You can pull up.
Say that to the
See?
audience. There you go.
Go into allmusicguide.com. Mike Rivera Latin, and my whole discography will come up. You can look at all the different artists that I've worked with. I worked with Tweed. I worked with different hip hop artists back in the day. It's just been all over the
I
map.
decided to get into the salsa world. I decided to come to my roots again and form a band 5 years ago. All right, with Tito Rivera, that helped me very much to form the band, to start it for me, and he didn't know who I was. I never heard this guy, but you know what? I was blessed enough that he did it. And then on the long run, it's been 5 years. We had 2 years of the COVID, so there was no music in that time. Everybody was doing everything indoors. And then, I know Mike Rivera for a while.
And I kept pushing him. I said, form a band. One day we used to do a lot of events. We still do events, but we were hiring bands all the time, different bands. And since I've been in the music industry, because my parents being musicians, I have the ear, like I can hear. So I would hear a band playing. I'm like, they're so off. Like I can tell. My mother taught me that. I can tell when the music is off, when you're off key. I don't know what key you're on, but I know you're off. But I can tell like it's not right. You know what I mean? So my mother's taught me that, because she always said, see that he was off over here. And my mother will walk around still, and she's, oh no, it was a piano.
She goes to our show.
So she's always here. She'll come to rehearsals and she comes to the shows. But I lost my train of thought. I was talking about music now. So I told JCee, after hiring all these different men, I said, JCee, you sing. You're an entertainer. He used to do freestyle. He's been singing. He's been doing a lot of things in many, many years. And I said, just form your own band. Don't be afraid. Let's just do it. And that's what we did. So one day he said, okay. So he started talking to musicians. What do you think?
One of my favorites, Edwin Torres, that
Yeah, Edwin Torres, the science.
Científico.
Right.
I know Edwin since he was 10.
Wow.
So look at that. He knows Edwin Torres since he was 10. Edwin Torres came into my life because
Right.
another friend of mine, Luis Ibarrito, and then all these musicians started popping out. Well, anyway, when I got back to Florida, that's when I started. Somebody took me to a rehearsal, and that was it. I was hooked. I said, I can do this. And I kept on, formed my band, and then Mike, I knew him through other artists too. We became very good friends, and I asked Mike out of the blue to play with me a couple of times, and that was it. I said, Mike, you think you could work with this guy? Mike was like, there might be some hope for you. I'm like, oh, hey, that's what
I
I'm
don't
thinking.
know. That's the way I say
Yeah.
it. Just as a side point,
Mhm.
you started with Tito Rivera, now you're working with Mike Rivera. So it's a Rivera.
Oh, look at
It's
that.
a Rivera thing.
It's a
Okay.
Rivera thing.
My initial is
Si es
my
Rivera,
initial
tiene
is
que
R.
ser bueno. I just want to point that out.
Ah.
And you know what? I got family that is Rivera.
Oh yeah.
So look at that. The
Yeah.
Rivera
But you had some great musicians out there that
Oh,
were
definitely.
mentors that really
thing. Yeah,
gave
I
him
really
they
appreciate
gave
a
him the
lot of people.
opportunity because they gave him the try to say, why didn't you try it out? Just don't be afraid. Jesus Manuel is an
Jesus Manuel
incredible
is like
great
has been a
friend to
brother for me,
him.
great friend.
Exactly.
He doesn't care if I'm a great singer, if you're a low singer. He just says, "Vamos a guarachar." And those are the people that I needed, and
Right.
I met a lot of people. Alida knows the same musicians that I formed the band with before we were together. So look at that.
Right.
It was all you.
Right.
Now, but listen to what you guys are talking about. You're talking about that sense of community
Yeah. Again.
and people supporting each other,
Yes.
building that network. There is no network, so we got to make our own network.
Yes,
Exactly.
we do. And
And
that's
the
what
other-
we're trying to do
that's what
right
we're trying
here.
to
And
do.
the other thing that you keep mentioning is that your mother taught you this and you learned that and so on and so forth. And the education part of it in general is key to all of this.
Yes.
I mean, when I was in school, when you were in school, everybody had music in school.
Yes.
I mean, real music
Yes.
programs. Everybody played
Yes.
instruments. Everybody,
Yeah.
learned the basics of. They
Yeah,
sang
they
in
did.
chorus.
I did. I used
They
to sing
sang
in
in
I was
choir.
one of the ones that
I used to sing in choir.
I used
in
to
cho-
pass
in
through
church.
music school, and I'm like, look at all those geeks, and look at me now. See, I had to not have to eat.
But
those
the
words
most,
back
for what you, where I know where you're going to is that the first program they cut in school is music and art,
then. I know.
and which is a very
The
sad
most
thing because
fundamental ones.
you need the creative side. It helps you so much. You have to be creative and both sides of the brain. And once you have that, I mean, and they keep
And a number of studies have been done that actually show a correlation between proficiency in music and proficiency in math.
see.
See,
And
those
see,
are the
and what was
important
my
things.
favorite subject? Math. I did excellent in math because I was always around music too. My mother played Chopin. My father played with Joe Valle, with Willie Rosario. He played one of the big times in New York. So he was a little guy. His name was JCee Hernandez, but he played with all the big guys. Everybody's hang out at our house. That's what my mother used to tell me. Joe Motoro.
Hay historia,
Mother
hay
Hernandez.
historia.
JCee Hernandez.
I know that name.
He was.
What did he play?
Her father
Piano.
was.
Yeah.
Her father was Charlie
The pianist.
Palmieri's
Best friend.
best friend since they were 6 years old.
Oh, I know the name. I never met him.
Oh, okay.
I know the name.
Izzy.
He was a cool
Yeah.
cat.
Make me
Yo.
cry. Yeah, I have his picture on the wall over there.
I used to hang around in Chicago with a gentleman named Victor Barra. He used to have a show called Mambo Express. And he had the most incredible LP
Wow.
collection. He had everybody, and he knew stories about everybody and about people who weren't the name artists, like JCee Hernandez's, and so on and so
Right,
forth.
right,
and,
right.
And Eli Lopez and so on. And so he used to tell us these stories constantly.
I know. I
Yeah, because they used
I
to
love
be
stories.
so back. I know back in the day in New York there was a musician union. There used to be a union. My father, I have his card because my father kept everything. There was a musician union, so they paid dues.
802 still exists.
It does.
Yes.
So and I don't know exactly what the union did, but it helped the musicians to be together and have sort of rules about pay and all that stuff like that.
The problem is a lot of the record dates, Latin record dates in New York or Miami for that matter, don't go through the union unless the artist has a signatory deal with the label.
Oh, okay.
So everybody does these underground records.
Right.
None of that stuff goes to the union.
Right.
But like a Celia Cruz record,
Right, that was union.
that was all union.
That was union.
I
Yeah.
remember
Those were
filling out
union,
tons
right.
of paperwork for
Wow.
those records, and Mark Anthony's signatory. That stuff all goes to the union. And
That was a control, but now
a number of the big ballad stuff that all goes to the musicians union, even here in Florida. But the majority all flies under the radar.
yeah.
So a lot of people don't even know that there's a musicians union here.
There is one here?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
see,
there's
I'm
one
just
here.
asking
I know
about
we
it.
were asking about that, but like Mike said, if you're not right, do I still can get in the union? Can a
You can join the union, but
a new salsero can join the union?
sure. The reason I mentioned rather signatory is because the label had a signatory deal with the union, so the contracts, everything obligado, you're obligated
Oh,
Okay.
so
to
now
do
you
everything
follow
through the
the
union.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
But now
I got you.
everybody's operating independently.
Right.
So, it makes it great because it's free because everybody can be independent, but you don't have
There's
you
no
know, the support of
control.
the union.
Right.
You don't have the
Right.
structure of a record company to
Correct.
actually control your promotion and your marketing.
Correct.
You don't have an A&R director who's going to come over and meet with you and say, JC, you know, let's listen to these songs and decide which is the style, how we're going to develop you as an artist. And they're not thinking about this record; they're thinking about from here to 5 years.
Right.
And so there's an art, you know, the
Right.
A&R guy help
Right.
the artist develop an artistic vision.
Right.
Well, that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Wow.
I remember at one time when I was living in New York and I was working for Sergio in the Latin division at Sony, I had 14 A&R people.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I moved to Miami in 2005, there was one
Wow.
A&R person
Yeah.
at
The
Sony Latin. One.
Right.
I used to go see him at his office. There'd be piles and piles of demos and photos. There's no way. And then as I started working with Sergio and George Lamora on their label, then I was handling a lot of the A&R chores, and there were within a few weeks there was piles and
See
piles.
what
of
I'm
demos
talking
on my
about? This
desk.
man is an encyclopedia. Okay, we're gonna have to have another part with Mike, a second part, because this man knows so much, and this is why I love working with him. And I really do appreciate everything that you have done for me in my short career. Thank you for believing in me.
Oh man, my
He
pleasure
is the
working with you
producer
guys.
of my first song. I
not
mean,
the last. That's for sure.
and not the last. We got 2 more working there. They're coming soon.
And he's in
Yo
charge of the
permiten.
orchestra now
Now
because
he's in charge of
it's a big.
Salsa and Control.
It's
a
not
big
easy.
responsibility.
It's a big responsibility.
But I really do
Yeah.
appreciate you, Mike. We love having you here. We're gonna have you again. But before we leave, we're just gonna mention a little bit about Quiero Ser Campeón, and then we're gonna despedir el show con la
La
canción.
canción. We'll put the video on so you guys can see it.
Well,
It's on
What was your
YouTube.
experience with me in that
Right.
grabación?
Well, as you remember, when we were finally decided on a song, before we didn't just we weren't just trying to pump out a single.
Correct.
Right.
And we sat down and we had many sessions where it was just me and you just practicing basic musical ideas. We spent hours talking,
Mm-hmm.
okay, about musical direction, what you wanted to say as an artist. It wasn't, a cookie cutter kind of a thing, and in general, I don't approach music that way. Everything I work on, it has to be unique and be its own statement. It just so happened that we had a close relationship and we were able to spend a lot of time really carving out a niche, that I felt reflected the artistic vision you had. And as we continue working on these new singles, it's the same idea. We have the style defined, okay? We know stylistically where we're going to go. But now we're going to start molding everything into a tighter overall artistic vision of how you're going to present your salsa music. And that for me is the exciting part. Just doing,
The creativity. That's
I like the
creation,
experience.
the
So it
molding.
was a new experience for me. Me coming from the hip hop, freestyle streets from New York. I mean, that's all it was. And it's not like I had opportunities to be with a salsa band back in the day. I did, but sometimes people are in a different time in that time. You're not.
You weren't in that.
My interest was into salsa. Yeah, even though I grew with salsa, my family, and I knew a whole bunch of salsa songs by heart. But my thing was the street, the hip hop, the break dancing, roller skating, all that stuff.
You had to come into my life to be a not
Right
for me a
there you go. So then I
salsera.
came to
Yo soy
Florida.
rockera,
I
okay?
came to Florida.
Yo
And
soy rockera.
that's when I came back. So anyway, we're gonna end the show at this point, and we'll have Mike Rivera another time for a second part. But nos vamos a despedir con este video y la canción se llama Quiero Ser Campeón, producida y arreglada por Mike Rivera, the Professor.
And
Thank
don't
you, Mike.
forget to
a lot
subscribe
for
to our
having
new
me.
channel. Oh, of course.
It's awesome.
So don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like our video. We're going to be on all platforms. We're just starting out. It's our first episode, so give us time, but you'll see it on Nuestro Magazine too, and in Control Productions page, and my page, Alida Hernandez, and JCee Colon. You'll see it all over the social media. So just like it, share it, and we didn't do too much Spanish today, pero siempre estamos en Spanglish. You never know what we're gonna
No,
throw
la
out.
próxima vez, si quiere,
La
hablamos en
próxima vez.
español.
Hablamos español también para que la gente que, you know.
Yo
Para
hablo
que
de-
tire unos disparates.
Disparate.
Ya se me chavó, ¿ves? Se me trabó la lengua ya.
Bueno, mi gente, hasta la semana que viene nos vemos, nos despedimos, JCee en Alida.
Take care,
Ahí
everybody.
vamos. Bye.
¿Listo, Mike?
Bueno, para mí eso está sabroso, Ángel, ¿qué tú crees?
Muchachos, eso quedó ready para imprimir.
Déjame llevar a JCee para que venga a chequear esto.
Dale, dale.
Nos fuimos. ¿Qué tú haces por ahí, mi fiel amigo sincero? Repartiendo tu alegría para que suenen los cueros. Solo te quiero decir que voy por un buen camino. No son cosas del destino lo que le pasa a la gente. Se portan indiferentes tratando de llegar, pero yo con humildad tan solo quiero triunfar. Yo quiero ser campeón para llegar a la meta y que vean la gente esa que yo sí puedo llegar. Con tu ayuda y tu lealtad he aprendido una enseñanza. Hay que cantar buena salsa para ser emprendedor. Gracias por los consejos, yo sí te las quiero dar.
English Cafe Music Podcast. We'll see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m., same channel.
Ya tú sabes, mi gente, sintonicen todos los miércoles desde las 7 de la noche. ¡Nos fuimos!